Due to the graphic nature of this program, viewer discretion is advised.
Hello, everyone. It is the Friday, May 1st, 2026 episode of the Marco Jure Show. Thank you for tuning in here. Today's groundbreaking news right here in America and across the board, where the facts are facts and hard truths thrive. Let's be the best of radio, informative, uncensored, unapologetic, and ready to go. Ladies and gentlemen, it is Friday. Let's get right down to work with our economic articles today. We'll finish off the week strong. We'll go over our stock market numbers and equity market numbers momentarily. But I want to delve into some of these articles that are a little bit troubling today that I want to go over with you so you're very much aware of where we stand economically. And what does this mean for the midterms in 2026? Only time will tell. For those of you that tuned in yesterday, most of you had heard already that our inflationary rate right now is 3.5%. Not the direction we want to be going. Okay, and let's just make that very clear. Things are headed in the wrong direction. This has got to be very troubling for the Trump administration. They've got to get this under control. We're seeing oil prices spiking right now. I just looked at a report out of, I believe it was Fox Business, the CEO of ExxonMobil saying that oil prices will likely continue to rise. Let's just be very cognizant of all this. Things are heading in the wrong direction. We've got to get things under control here in the United States, and that's not taking place right now. I want to break down an article, though, out of the Wall Street Journal. This is a very important economic report we've got to discuss. And it says here that the U.S. debt tops 100% of GDP. That's gross domestic product. That's everything that we buy, we make, we purchase here in the United States. Everything. And as of March 31st, 2026, the country's publicly held debt was $31.265 trillion. This is all while gross domestic product was proceeding that year around $31.216 trillion. So, based on the report by the Commerce Department yesterday, this puts the ratio at 100.2% compared to 99.5% when the fiscal year ended on September 30th, 2026. So, again, this is more likely to climb as time goes on for the foreseeable future. So, we see that the debt is outshadowing our gross domestic product, ladies and gentlemen. Not a good thing. But I want to break this down for you so we understand exactly what is happening. Of that $31.26 trillion, this is the money that includes the cash owed debt by way of investors, bankers, pension funds, foreign governments, mutual funds, the Federal Reserve, and anyone that purchases U.S. Treasury bonds, notes, and bills. All that is taken into effect right here. Now, in fiscal year 2025, the U.S. government collected some $4.9 trillion in total revenue. A lot of money. But of that $2.6 trillion in individual federal taxes, payroll taxes, think Social Security, Medicare, allocated some roughly $1.6 trillion in taxes. Then you have the corporate tax bringing in about $500 billion. And then you have other excise taxes, the tariffs that Trump loves so much, estate taxes, and other duties that were collected ranged to about $200 billion. So we collect a lot of money. Make no mistake about it, lots of money is taken from the American people here. But watch where the problem comes in here. The government spending in fiscal year 2025, despite all that money that we took in, exceeded that money that was in the Treasury to the tune of $6.1 trillion, on top of the $1.1 trillion in interest on the existing debt. So you see how this is all bubbling up very, very quickly, folks. This is why the debt is continuing to grow year after year, despite years of prosperity or, for example, a much stronger economy and economic growth. Now, we're sitting today with a debt-to-revenue ratio in fiscal year 2025 that was about 680%. Now, what does that mean? That means the government owes 6.8 times what it actually collected for that fiscal year. Can you believe this? I mean, this is all problematic, folks. We're not bringing down the debt in any meaningful way. We're not being fiscal conservatives, as we ought be. living within our means. That's not taking place right now. And just for some context, countries that hit a debt-to-revenue ratio of 500% or 5 times what they owe often hit fiscal crises, which, again, we're much well beyond all that. Now, for those of you that have not, turned off your radios by now or thrown your computer or cell phones out the window, understand this. Some of you are going, well, Gerace, I thought it was 40 trillion. I thought that's where we were right now. And you'd be right to say that. Right now, as of April 2026, we just hit $39.1 trillion in national debt. Lots of money. That's $108,000 per American. You can thank your local congressman or woman or Congress-it for all that, and of course, throwing our money away. But to get to the $39.1 trillion, we also have to take into account the intragovernmental holdings that roughly equate to about $7 to $8 trillion. This is money that the government owes itself. Isn't that nice? So think the Social Security trust funds, the Medicaid trust funds that, again, people are taxed on. That money goes directly into that. You also have the federal employee retirement funds and the military retirement funds as well. So think of it like this. You have government spending 101 with Marco Gerace today. Get that. These trust funds each collect direct taxes taken right from you. So, for example, you may pay 12.4% in Social Security, 2.9% to Medicaid, or Medicare, 0.9% in a surtax for the high earners in this country. All goes directly into these trust funds. So this does not go first to the U.S. Treasury like the federal income tax does. We're not working with the IRS. We're going directly into these funds. Herein lies the problem. When these funds have, or had, I should say, surpluses, that money is then transferred over to the U.S. Treasury. Oh, so that means they have more money to spend now. Instead of keeping that money in that trust fund, they're now putting it elsewhere. And aren't we told time after time that we're running low on Social Security? It might not be there in the near future. I find that very interesting. Isn't that nice, though? So they can spend even more money. It's amazing to me. Nothing is ever enough for these greedy hands in Congress. Let me just tell you that much. Now, you may be asking yourself, well, looking at the public debt, how do I keep spending a large portion of my earnings every single year to the federal government, and we never raise any of this debt? Nothing ever comes down. It just grows and grows over time. Well, that's Keynesian economics for you. The idea that getting into debt is going to be beneficial later on for you, which it never really is. Well, because, again, you're not living within your means. You're simply borrowing money that you don't have, and you're never paying it back, so that bubble gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Look where we are. Almost $40 trillion in national debt. So then what happens is, what do? Well, you know what they do in Congress. They never cut spending, ever. When do they ever cut spending? When's the last time you can remember anybody in Congress cutting spending? You can't. So they pass this bloated spending bills. They raise the debt limit constantly. Pass various continuing resolutions. They borrow money from other countries, specifically like China, for example. And that allows the debt to, again, take form in the terms of bonds, I should say. And that's just on repeat. That keeps happening over and over. Other countries buy up our debts, and we keep spending like we have no tomorrow. But we never pay anything off like it was if you or I had debt, where we pay off our credit card debt. We pay off our student loan debt. We pay off our car loan debt, and what have you, our mortgages, and things of that nature. You live within your means. You don't just continue to borrow money, because at some point the banks say, hey, we're not going to give you any more money. We've had enough. You're not paying us back. Your credit scores are low. Imagine what the U.S. credit score would be right now. I can only imagine. I often wonder if those in Congress have ever balanced a checkbook, though, before. Because, again, no one could or would be this fiscally irresponsible, I don't think. But when you're spending other people's money, or when the Federal Reserve can just print out that money, which again causes even more inflation, which is why our dollar's worth roughly 2 to 3 pennies of what it once was, this creates a massive fiscal meltdown, ladies and gentlemen. This is why we're in the situation we're in today. That, and of course, because the Fed at its inception never printed out the interest. Did you know that? No. The interest we owe was never in circulation, so that money just comes directly from you. So you're always constantly losing money as time goes on, and the banks always collect more of it. It goes right back to them. Isn't that great? which again is very problematic, but at the same time, we're becoming insolvent as a country. We've got to be aware of this. This is where we're headed. Should we not reverse course? And again, I don't even know how you even do that at this point. We're looking at things like the petrodollar, for example, becoming less and less desirable. We're seeing BRICS become a much stronger force globally. Look what Iran's doing in the Persian Gulf right now. They're not trading in the petrodollar to come through the Strait of Hormuz. They're trading in the Chinese yuan, which again is boosting up their economy, by the way. That allows those nations to say, hey, we want Chinese yuan now. We don't want the petrodollar. We'll trade in this currency now. That is a big blow when the U.S. dollar is less desirable. And again, it weakens the dollar. And that debt bubble just burst at some point when that becomes a reality. Now, when that happens, I can't say to you. But this is all cause for concern. This is a great cause for concern. We're definitely spending more than what we take in. And none of this is positive for the U.S. citizen. Nothing at all here. So I wanted to bring that up to you. It's, again, very, very troublesome that we have so much debt and it's just mounting and time again. Now we want a $1.5 trillion defense budget, spending even more money we don't have. It's incredible, folks. It really is. And what have we invested that money in, by the way? It's not like we have the best roads, infrastructure, best schooling in the world, right? Best buildings and what have you. All that's decaying. It's decadence. Go look at any major inner city. Go look at any downtown in any city right now. What do you see? Do you see crumbling streets? Destroyed sidewalks? Unkept buildings? Empty buildings right now, by the way? You see all those things. When's the last big renovation we've seen to our roads, our bridges, our highways in this country? It's amazing. So it'd be one thing if we were wasting your money on that. We have the best roads and bridges and tunnels and, ports and all this in the world. We don't have that. We simply don't have that. We're not there anymore, folks. Not state of the art, I would have to say. It's crumbling, and you can see that. People like Bernie Sanders, they talk a big game out, crumbling infrastructure. Well, what do you do about that? Do we have any bills put forth to renovate or rebuild this infrastructure that's crumbling before us? Of course not. No, it always gets put for more war, which we spent trillions of dollars since 9/11 on. But that's all problematic, what we spend this money on, especially foreign aid too. I have a big problem with that. When you're broke, how do you give other countries more money? How do you allow the Fed just to print out more cash and just give it to other countries, and you and I pay for it all? Meanwhile, they tell you and I we can go straight to hell. I mean, this is where we are right now. Let's just be very clear on all this. And if this last article out of the Wall Street Journal didn't make your blood boil, it should have, by the way, I want to bring up your attention now to an article in Fox Business just to illustrate what I just told you and how the government just spends like they're, drunken sailors. I don't even know what they spend like. Someone on a bender, that's for damn sure, though. Get a load of this. It says President Trump signed an executive order on Thursday to help expand access to retirement saving accounts for Americans who do not have employer-provided plans. Sounds nice, doesn't it? It's like, geez, Trump cares so much about me. This is fantastic. Couldn't be better. Now, here's what they said. This is what Trump said in the Oval Office just the other day. Beginning at the start of the next year, every American will be able to go to TrumpIRA.gov and open a new low-cost IRA account. You'll then be able to access the same type of retirement accounts that the federal employees enjoy through the thrift savings plans, which are incredible. As part of the federal savings match program, low-income Americans will be eligible to receive up to $1,000 per year in matching funds deposited directly into their accounts. Now, again, sounds great, doesn't it? You think, the government's going to take care of the people now. We're going to reinvest in the American people. We'll add money. We'll match a certain amount of money. This money will grow over time. Everything will be fantastic. Just like the Trump accounts, by the way, which are privately funded. It's not coming from the federal government, of course. But we're going to delve into this in just a moment. But here's what they continue to say here. They say the great thing for millions of Americans who lack employer-sponsored plans, this will be really revolutionary because they'll be covered. Nobody thought this was possible. For example, if a 25-year-old who is eligible for the Savers Match Program invests $165 a month under the matching federal contributions, they will have an estimated $465,000 in their account by the time they're 65 years old. In other words, they'll be rich. And there'll be something awfully nice about that. Now, let me ask you something. If you're 25 years old now, and again, 40 years from now, you plan on retiring at 65, and you have, what is it, under $500,000, would you think you'll be considered rich with $500,000 in 40 years, folks? What is that? You can't even retire on that now. They estimate now you have to have at least $1.5 to $2 million just to retire in America today. So you're really undershooting now if you're only putting $165 a month in for 40 years. And by the way, how realistic is that they put $165 in every single month if they're, depends what they do, of course, doesn't matter. But how many people are actually going to be investing $165 a month? So, I look at this and I say, all right, what's the big catch here? What's really going on here? Well, the Trump administration's efforts will work in conjunction with a 2022 legislation that instructs the federal government to match retirement plan contributions for people earning below $35,000 a year, with as much as $1,000 beginning next year. So let's pause again. In America, especially if you're in a city, you're not making ends meet with $35,000 a year. I can tell you that right now. Maybe in rural areas you can make that pass. Okay. But if you're in a city, you're not going to be putting $165 a month in. I'm just going to be honest with you. You might put a small contribution in. But you're not putting that much money in, especially with the cost of living in our cities right now. And again, inflation being up, the price of the pumps, the price for food. You're not going to be able to dish that extra money out. You just aren't going to be able to do that. So how feasible is this for all Americans that are earning under that threshold, by the way, which is not a lot of money, especially if you're living in a city? It's going to be very, very difficult to do things. Anyways, first things first. The first thing that came to my thoughts were what? Where is this money going to come from? Where are they going to get this money to match what is put into these government-sponsored Trump IRAs? Where's this money going to be coming from? Now, they don't tell us, of course, in this article, but there are a few options. I'll break it down for you. Where can they get the money in the Treasury so they can utilize this for this Trump IRA? Well, number one, they can use existing revenue, which, again, we know doesn't even match the current spending right now. So where does that money come from? Well, the Fed would have to just print it out and then throw it into the spending. That's how it would work there. Okay? That's how it would always work. They can slash other programs. Doubt that will ever happen. So the existing revenue is not going to match that. Okay? The next step, we could borrow money, which we've done a lot in the past. We see this a lot. And then, of course, we can issue more debt. That's another way of thinking about it. We can cut spending, which is another option, but that's never going to happen, so let's forget about that one. And then we come to the final point. What else could we do here in America? Well, we can do what Bernie Sanders, the little Robert Rice love to do, the Zoran Mamdami's love to do, the Katie Wilsons in Seattle love to do. They can raise taxes. Oh, don't forget Gavin Newsom, too, by the way. Gavin Newsom loves to raise taxes, except when the billionaires flee the state. Then he kind of backtracks on that. But they can raise taxes. They say we need to raise taxes because we need to spend money on this wonderful program, the Trump IRAs. Will match what people put in, and this will be beneficial, but we have to raise taxes. So that means everybody's taxes go up. So again, it's the money's got to come from somewhere. So whether the Fed prints it and puts it in there, in the terms of borrowing, that's one way to think about it. They can use the existing revenue, which I told you before, that's not going to work because we don't even have them. We spend more than we even take in. Every year, our Treasury is insolvent. So where are they going to get this money from? They've got to print out more of it. And then inflation goes up, prices go up, and it becomes more and more problematic as time goes on. I'm starting to think that no one in the federal government knows that we're broke right now. I really believe that. But here's the thing. Why don't they just get their own Roth IRAs? I don't understand why the government needs to be involved in this in the first place. Anyone could open up a Roth IRA. Why is the government handling this issue? And again, we're already looking at, paying in various programs. We're already very much involved in, obviously, things like Social Security and Medicare and what have you people pay into. Why can't people just take their own money and create their own mutual fund, their own IRA, and put money into it that way? Why does it have to be the government always involved in these things? Because now it costs the taxpayer even more. Again, this is just going to add more and more to inflation. Again, it never ends, folks. It never seems to end. So while the program sounds like a great idea, and he's got everyone behind him right now smiling in this picture I'm looking at, where are they going to get the money from? Because to me, there's only two options here. Either the Fed prints more money out, and we obviously borrow that money from another country, someone buys up our debt, and we owe it to them, or we have to raise taxes on the American people. I don't think that's a winning position. I don't think any of them are winning positions, to be honest with you. But that didn't stop Trump from instructing the Treasury Department to open up the new TrumpIRA.gov website. There we go. More and more spending. There it is. We need to cut spending, folks. That's my whole point with these articles. We need to cut the spending. We don't want this. We can't afford it. That's what I'm trying to say to you. And in related news, let's move on to another economic article. This one you'll love. This one's fantastic. Oh, my goodness. This is out of Reuters. It says U.S. manufacturing activity held steady in April, but supplier delivered performance worsened as the Middle Eastern conflict disrupted shipping in the Strait of Hormuz, boosting prices for raw materials and other inputs to a 4-year high. Yeah, look at this. Now, the Institute for Supply Management issued a report on Friday, and its manufacturing PMI numbers, that would be the Purchasing Managers Index, was unchanged at a near 4-year high of 52.7 last month. I'll get into what that means momentarily. The PMI remained above the 50-point level, which indicates expansion in the manufacturing sector for the fourth straight month. Now, let's pause for a second. Let's pause. They're saying manufacturing has expanded for the fourth straight month. Everyone gets happy. And by the way, I told you before, if you want to increase people getting into the middle class, what you do is you bring back manufacturing to this country. That's the way you do it. That's the best way to do this. That's the way you bring good jobs back to the country, better paying jobs. Obviously, it boosts the quality of life. Cost of living will ease with these people because they're getting better paying jobs. Now, here's the problem with all this. The PMI, this measures whether manufacturing is expanding or contracting. And what they do is they survey all these manufacturers across the country and look at things like new orders, production, employment, supplier deliveries, and inventories. And when we see a value of 50, so let's say the report for April was 50, what that means is there's no expansion. It's just as is. Nothing's changed. But when we get a number above 50, that means we get expansion. So we're definitely in the expansion category because we're at 52.7. Now, what happens when it's below 50? That means there's a reduction in growth. So let's say we kept losing lots of manufacturing. That number would be below 50, which is problematic. So keeping all that in mind, 52.7 means that we're still expanding manufacturing. It's growing, but it's at a steady, moderate pace. So it's not where we want it to be. We want it to be much, much higher than that. And it also helps the government gauge things like economic momentum, inflationary pressures, supply chain stress, hiring trends. Not a great number, but some growth in the month of April. So we want it to be higher. But the problem is, here we go. Here's the problem with all this. And this is what's very illustrated in this article. Here's the bad part. In the same ISM manufacturing report, it says that the prices paid index is at 84.6. This is the highest it's been in 4 years. So let's explain what that means. Very, very troubling. That means costs are surging, ladies and gentlemen. That means, for example, you have an increase in the raw materials, the components of the company or manufacturing sector, the energy it costs to produce, all these things. All these things are factored into this. Those prices are up significantly. And like our previous indicator, anything above 50 means costs are rising for them. So the manufacturer's costs are going up very significantly. So here's how the gauge reads for this sector. Any reading over 70 means higher inflation. That means obviously the cost, the prices now will be spilling over to the consumers because they have to make a profit with all this. They can't not do that. So it's very, very important that we understand what's exactly at stake here. But I told you before, the PPI numbers, the producer price index was going up, I told you last month. All these things are going up. And that's having an effect on things, for example, like the interest rates. They're now going to probably likely stay between the 3.5 and 3.75% range, noting that the growing inflation is worrisome. Absolutely. So I don't think if Trump has Jerome Powell stay in, or if he has Kevin Warsh in there, no one's going to change these interest rates, which he desperately wants to lower, because he wants more cheap money to be borrowed and then put through the economy. And obviously he knows more dollars chasing things, goods and products, the economy will expand some, which is what Trump wants. But it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. Financial markets expect that the Fed will keep the rates unchanged into 2027. Yep. Nothing's going to change, folks. It can't. It's too late to change now. So not much changing on that front, ladies and gentlemen. So manufacturing headed somewhat in the right direction, not nearly what it needs to be. And of course, because of this war, we're seeing production costs skyrocketing in manufacturing. That means more prices increasing now at these stores and retailers when we buy them. All right, so if that's not bad enough, let's get more focused on this next issue. We've got 177th in the jobs April report. Yep, there it is. Surpassing expectations. Unemployment rate remains steady at 4.2%. And my goodness, we had hourly earnings grew by a modest 0.2% month over month. Isn't that great? I think that's fantastic. I think that equates to about 6 cents, if I'm not mistaken. So there you go, folks. We have inflation, 3.5%, and your hourly earnings are growing by 0.2% month over month. Fantastic, right? Let me know how that works out for everybody. Oh, my goodness. Anyways. Let's get into our equity market. Let's break this down for us. We've got to break this down. It's very important. We do Let's take a look at our wonderful stocks here. We got the Dow Jones trading at $49,573.05, down just a meager 0.16% today. We got the S&P 500 in the green at $7,238.83, up 0.41%. And then we got the NASDAQ trading at $25,133.73, up almost a percentage point today. So what's going on here with these wonderful markets of ours, folks? Well, S&P 500 had a very strong week. New highs for them. The index hit a fresh record high, driven by strong earnings. We had some easing in the oil prices. We'll talk about that momentarily. And of course, you have new outlets, reports, continued the bullish sentiments, and tech leadership, all affecting these things right now. All these marginal stocks are greatly affected by the government, and of course, these individual companies being very bullish on AI and the tech sectors. So never forget that. We look at things like the NASDAQ, again, leading the market this week with the stronger performance of the week, consistently outpacing the S&P 500 and the Dow. Again, AI-related names, Apple, strength, are cited as key drivers of this. Dow Jones this week was stable but lagging, still trading near the $5,000 level, which Pam Bondi, I'm sure, is ecstatic about. Blue chip cyclicals are underperforming compared to the tech-heavy sectors, so that's why you're seeing a little bit of stagnation with the Dow Jones. But overall, again, I told you before, the AI markets are going to be a bubble for them. This is what they're investing in. This is what people think is going to be the next big thing. And that's why you're seeing these stocks performing significantly higher when talking about the economy as an overall. Let's jump into our tech stocks right now, just so you can see exactly where we are with all this. And this is, again, is very important. This is why a lot of these top marginal stocks are up. We got Bitcoin making quite a rebound as of late, trading at $78,234.19 a share, up 2.78% today. We got NVIDIA trading at $199.84, up 0.13%. Now we got Meta, good old Mark Zuckerberg, $612 a share today, barely changed, 0.01% increase today. Still in the green, though. Apple trading at $282.79 a share, up 4.22%, one of the higher performers of today. Amazon trading at $269.64 a share, up 1.73%. And then we go over to Google, good old Alphabet, trading at $386.28 a share, up 0.38%. Microsoft trading at $414.44 a share, up 1.63%. Dell Technologies, my wonderful Dell computer. I love it so much. Trading at $210.07. Trading up at 0.59% today from yesterday's close. And Broadcom, trading at $420 a share, up 0.61%. So the overall performance for these 9 stocks today are all in the green. We've got tech earnings that have been overwhelmingly strong this week. We have AI demand, which is driving the entirety of the sector. That's why we're seeing that. Again, I told you, the government is bullish on them. And if the government is bullish, if the government is helping invest in these, you're going to see the stocks going up, and this is going to be a big draw for investors. We got some cooling in the oil that took place, and of course, inflationary pressures are boosting risk appetite for many investors. We've also got the NASDAQ and the S&P 500 hitting record highs this week, so again, it's more desirable to invest. People go where the money seems to be flowing. We're also pulling mega caps with them as well, and the only real drag this week was Meta, but still doing fairly well today, despite some earnings-related drops they took this week. So there you go with our tech stocks, ladies and gentlemen, our crypto. Again, I'm seeing Bitcoin getting back to where it was a couple months ago when it was about $83,000 a share, but certainly heading back up. All right, folks, let's jump right into our precious metals. Let's not waste any time. We've got gold trading at $4,634.70, up about 5 points today. We've got silver in the green as well, trading at $76.30 a share, up 3.08% today. We got platinum trading at just over $2,000, $2,000.30, up 0.29%. And palladium trading at $1,542.50 a share, up almost 10 basis points. And copper's trading at, $5.96 a share, down 0.21%. Yep, there we go. So what do we have here? We've got, for example, we've got gold prices are slightly up. They're supported by a softer U.S. dollar strength right now. And again, as I told you, the ongoing geopolitical uncertainty in the Persian Gulf is a big factor in all this. And investors are leaning towards gold as a safe haven asset again. That's what it's coming down to. So remember, as the dollar struggles, we'll see those gold prices beginning to go up. Again, still up significantly from this time last year, despite kind of dropping a little bit in recent months. We look at silver now trading marginally higher, again, buoyed by the industrial demand's expectations. We've got gains are capped by cautious sentiment and manufacturing data because, again, they're used for other things other than trading. Platinum is flat this week, but supply concerns are coming from mining regions, are balanced by weaker automotive sector demand as well. And palladium is just a little bit low today, pressured by the substitution trends in the catalytic converters and easing supply constraints. Yeah, so there you go, folks. There you go. So it's a split week. Again, they're all in the green today. But pretty consistent from where they were a week ago. So no shock there. Let's look at some of our oil stocks before we move on. Let's look at WTI crude trading at $102.06 per barrel today. Down some, almost three basis points. Then we have Brent crude trading at $108.49. Down some 1.73%. Yep, and then Murbain crude is trading at around the same thing, $107 per barrel right now. I think Urals is down just a little bit today. I didn't get that reading today, but I know it was down just a little bit from where it was a week ago. So there's that with the oil. And again, I told you before, the U.S.-Iran conflict escalation is really injecting a massive risk premium. Obviously, this is the biggest problem for the oil prices. We don't know if the commerce is going to open up in the Strait. Therefore, a lot of these, for example, Murbain and what have you, Dubai crude has nowhere to go. And it becomes more difficult for the Saudis, for the Kuwaitis, for the Iraqis to, get the oil flow through. That's a big problem. Then you add in the blockade, for example, the military actions, then Iranian crude doesn't get through. It becomes more and more problematic. So we have the Strait of Hormuz disruptions are really the single biggest driver of all this. 20% of the global oil flows are really just not going anywhere. And Brent crude this week was up to about $125 per barrel. And I told you this before, it's going to start to go back up. That's what's going to happen. Right now it's dropped a little bit today because President Trump's talking about peace negotiations. We're talking to them on the phones and this and that. So again, the rhetoric does matter. People think it's going to end soon, so therefore they push back and then the prices drop just a little bit. But make no mistake about it. If the escalation continues, we get back into a hot war with them. So long as this blockade continues, so long as the Iranians are closing off the straits to anyone that's not coordinating with them, this is going to be problematic. And you'll see those prices beginning to rise. We have to understand something. When 20% of the global oil supply is no longer there, the prices have got to go up, folks. They have to go up. And this is affecting economies in Europe and Asia alike. And it affects us here at home, too, because we're still keyed into those benchmarks. We have to be. So just because we're producing, I think, a record high, by the way, 24 million barrels of oil in the United States. We blow everyone else out of the water. It's amazing what we can do here with our ingenuity here in the United States. It's amazing. But we're still keyed into that system. We can't forget that. And that's why I always tell you every week, look where we are, look where we're headed. Because our prices also have to reflect upon that as well. And we really should be energy independent right now, but we tend to be selling our oil right now, for example, which is good for, obviously, the big oil, but it's not good for people here at the pump. We're seeing prices in California. I can't even believe this. Upwards of $9 per gallon for unleaded in parts of California, like Los Angeles, for example. Again, things are beginning to rise. People are seeing it. We're seeing the steady increase in unleaded gas prices. Obviously, diesel prices are up, which is the bigger driver of the inflation because they're even more exorbitant. So we look at things like supply stress and refinery demand, upward pressure on them. It's going upwards. It's really starting to go upwards. Again, it's going to start climbing. And then the market fears, once that really begins to set in, I think you'll see a wider regional conflict will be the result of that. Should we go back to war with them? The Iranians, I think you'll see the market fears begin to kick back, and those prices are only going to start going up. That's just what it comes down to. And you have peace talks stalled right now, so again, investors, they know that oil is selling for more, so it's more of a worthwhile position to get into. Obviously, investing a couple of months ago would have been more beneficial for you. But again, that's why the oil is rising, because of that critical choke point, and that's going to stay that way so long as this war continues on. So I don't think we'll see much of a change. You might see it go up and down. It'll fluctuate. But if we really start getting back in this war, I do believe it. I think the IEA is saying the exact same thing. We're looking at going into our reserves right now because we're uncertain about where this oil is going. It's going to be problematic. It really is as time goes on. So that leads me to our next point. Let's flip over to another great topic. This is out of ZeroHedge. Where are we in this war? Is there any sign of anything happening that's positive? We hear things. We hear, we're in talks with them. We're doing this. Are we really? And then to add insult to injury, we have Scott Bessent now, our Treasury Secretary, taking to X on Friday, that'd be today, to again call the Iranian leaders rats. I'm sure that's going to get them right to the table, don't you, folks? Let's call them rats. Let's call them barbarians. Let's call them all these things. I'm sure they're just going to kowtow right away. They just can't wait to bend the knee to the United States. To good old Scott Bessent, right, who was one of the people that was the architects of trying to destroy the Iranian rial the first half of this year in January, which is why we saw the economic riots in Iran. Again, I don't think it's going to bode well for restarting these negotiations. I'm just going to be honest with you. But here he is. He's busy boasting about the economic damage unleashed by the ongoing U.S. naval blockade. Here's what he said. He said, "It is very difficult for rats in a sewer to pipe to know what's going on the outside world. Some color for the Iranian leadership as they literally sit in the dark." Then he goes on to list a couple addendums to this. Here's what he said. He said, "The United States has complete control of the Strait of Hormuz." That's a complete lie. "There is a hard currency," and he's referring to the U.S. dollar. "Food and gasoline rationing are in place." I think that's going to be taking place here really soon, too. With the drought we're having, look no further than California, folks. Things are going up. They're not going down. The entire international community has turned against you. That's not true either. Now, the Gulf Arab states are not very happy with the Iranians. We can understand why. But India's not mad at them. China's not mad at them. Russia's not mad at them. The Pakistanis aren't mad at them. The Omanis aren't mad at them. The Iraqis are coming to them right now. You have Iraqis, by the way, you have Iraqi men right now that want to join the war effort against the United States. Can you believe this? This is what's taking place right now. This is the mentality of what's going on. It's very, very concerning, of course. But again, not true at all. The international community is turning against you. I think that them. Look at our relationship with NATO right now. Our own allies in Europe wouldn't even come to our own backing. Who's come to support us in all this? Very, very few people, folks. Well, certainly nobody has come to our aid in this. And then finally he says the blockade will continue until there is a pre-February 27 freedom of navigation. Who is Scott Bessent to say all this when we attack them? Under perfidy, amid negotiations, we killed their supreme leader. We killed their military generals and what have you. We've killed their children, by the way. And then Scott Bessent's on X telling them what they need to do. It's not going to happen, folks. Let me just tell you that right now. I'm going to be honest with you. It simply is not going to happen. You're not going to get the Iranians to rush to a deal with you and say, yes, 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 we'll give you all these things. Please call us rats more, Mr. Bessent. Not going to happen. If you're in negotiations, you cannot speak to people like this. Would FDR go and call Joseph Stalin a rat during World War II? He wouldn't. It wouldn't happen. None of this is beneficial. None of this is conducive to more positivity in talks and what have you. Not going to happen. And they're the ones in a position of strength right now. We are not. We don't control the Strait of Hormuz. You can have a blockade out there 500 miles away in the Arabian Sea. It's not stopping anything. We know at least 40 ships have crossed through it. Or we were unable to stop them either way. But this is very problematic. Now you're just adding, more insult to injury here. It's not conducive. And they know exactly what Scott Bessent was doing at the beginning of the year. He said it during the World Economic Forum. That we caused the crashing of the Iranian rial, which caused the economic problems, which led to these protests. And then, of course, our CIA, MI6, were able to arm. President Trump confirmed this. Again, I'm not making this stuff up. They've said this very bluntly. We actually gave the Kurds, we gave the Baluchis, the Mujahideen al-Khalqs weapons to go and commit crimes against the police, the civilians in Iran, and attack military bases. What kind of nonsense is all this? And then we think the Iranians are just simply going to just forget all about this? This was the first attempt of regime change in Iran. They understand this. They know this, that obviously the attack on February 28th was the second attempt to do this. That's why you have people like Josh Hawley saying, geez, I thought this would be over in a couple days. Well, no. It's not, because you underestimated the Iranians. And we were not ready for what they had. We underestimated them. So there's a lot going back and forth here. Again, this is not positive. This is not moving us in the right direction. And they're not going to talk to Witkoff. They're not going to talk to Kushner. They may talk to J.D. Vance, but they know that he's beholden to Netanyahu. They understand this by now. They see what's going on. And obviously, if you listen to my show, you understand this as well. Here we go, though. The article continues. It says, Israel to renew bombing if nuclear issue not dealt with. So, again, they're getting us ready. This is what's going to happen. The Iranians are not going to give up their nuclear technology. They'll use the nuclear bomb as a catalyst for going back to war. They'll say, what will you do? Do you want them to have a bomb again? This will put us at risk. And that's the way they'll sell to the American people. But in Israeli kilograms of uranium enriched to 60% is not removed from the Islamic Republic, the entire latest war will be considered one big failure. Iran has enough of its stockpile is sufficient for 11 nuclear bombs. They don't want a nuclear bomb. I don't know how many times I have to say this, but I think I need to in case we have some new listeners here. They don't want a nuclear bomb. They've said this before. That's why they were in negotiations with us. They were fine to negotiate this with us back in 2015. They were fine negotiating with us back in 2025. And if Iran is this big looming threat, why would you attack them amid negotiations? That makes no sense, folks. It really doesn't. And I don't have really much more I can add to this other than if Israel continues to stay in Lebanon, the war will continue on as well. And the Iranians will not stop fighting. They will not stop backing Hezbollah, who is fending them off. They're not going to stop giving aid and what have you to Hamas as well in Gaza, so long as that's going on, where they're continuing to shell people and kill people in both countries. Excuse me, I mean Gaza's not a country, but the territory, rather. But this is the problem here. This is the problem here. And if we have Netanyahu telling Trump, no, if we can't get this uranium given to us, which they've already said they're not going to give this to us, they're not going to do that. But they'll agree to no nuclear weapons technology, but they're not going to hand over their highly enriched uranium. They're not going to do it. They've made this clear, and that's where they stand on this. So what's the next step here? The next step will be getting them to the negotiating table, giving them what they want, while keeping checks against them building a nuclear bomb. That's the only thing you can have. So really have the JCPOA yet again. Maybe you get a couple more things from it, maybe. But you're also going to get a Strait of Hormuz that is now with a toll that the Omanis and the Iranians will collect, and the Chinese yuan. That's definitely going to be happening. They're trying to say this is not going to work in the future. That's the reality. That's the reality. U.S. Treasury hits back against Hormuz tolls. That's going to be the future of the Strait of Hormuz. They will be collecting a $2 million for every ship that comes through there. You can thank the U.S. government for that, and of course Netanyahu for wanting to go in. That's what it comes down to. And by the way, the War Powers resolution ends today. I haven't heard anything about what's going to be taking place next. We'll have to keep an eye on that over the weekend, of course. What will Congress do? Will there be military action as a declaration of war? But this is, unless the lawmakers really formally authorize this military action, I don't know what Trump will do next. I don't know if he'll try to continue, if we'll keep a blockade there and then try to use that as leverage for negotiations. Will we attack again? Will Israel attack again? Again, we don't know. And that just kicks off another resumption of the War Powers Act. We have to go in again because we need to do this because they're trying to build a nuclear bomb again. Only time will tell. And by the way, speaking of Israel and other very important news coming out of the Middle East, of course, this is in the Mediterranean itself. This is out of NBC. It said activists on a flotilla of boats seeking to break Israel's naval blockade of Gaza said on Thursday that Israel's forces intercepted the vessels overnight, smashing engines and detaining some of those on board while they were sailing in international waters near Greece, hundreds of miles from Gaza and Israel. This global flotilla set sail earlier this month from Barcelona. Organizers have said that more than 70 boats and 1,000 people from around the world would be participating, with more vessels joining the original boats as the flotilla sailed across the Mediterranean. So now we have, this is amazing to me, we have Israeli ships in the Mediterranean abducting civilians in international waters that are over 600 miles away from Gaza in full view of the world. I don't understand this. What are they arresting them on? What law did they break sailing in the Mediterranean? Oh my goodness, it's hilarious. And no one's really even talking about this too, but I haven't heard anybody speak about this today or even yesterday when this was starting to break. Now, according to the ship's tracker published on activist group's website, 22 vessels were intercepted in international waters west of the southern Greek island of Crete, while a further 36 were still sailing midday on Thursday. Israel's foreign ministry said on a post on X that it was taking about 175 activists from more than from 20 boats participating in the flotilla to Israel. And the provocative flotilla were taken off the vessels and were taken off unharmed. Okay. Again, very interesting. I don't know what you're taking them off these vessels for. Are they trying to attack Israel? I don't understand this. Turkey's foreign ministry condemned the seizure as an act of piracy and said that the foreign minister had discussed the raid over the phone with his Spanish counterpart about this. Spain then summoned the Israeli charge in Madrid to convey its strongest condemnation of the detention of the flotilla, which included Spanish citizens. Italy and Germany said that they were also following developments with great concern and called for international law to be respected and for restraints from the irresponsible actions. There is no international law. That's what it comes down to. There is no international law. Israel thinks they can act with impunity. Again, look at February 28th, 2026. They want to bomb a building with the Ayatollah and top military commanders. They could do that. That's fine. They want to go in Gaza right now amid a ceasefire, shell people, drop more missiles, starve people. That's fine. Doesn't matter. It's self-defense after all, don't you know? Look what's happening in southern Lebanon right now. Telling 1.5 million people never to return to their homes again? Where the hell do they get off doing this and saying this to people? That's not their territory. That's not their country. It's not their land. This is, again, violations of the UN charters. Illegal occupation of territory. No war was declared. I mean, this is ridiculousness. But nobody checks anybody. Certainly not the board of peace that Trump and Netanyahu have created for themselves to do, I guess, whatever the hell they want. But this is, again, very problematic. It says here that the activists said that Israeli forces boarded and disabled the boats. Yep. So where do they get off doing this? Again, I don't understand this. Was there some looming threat from this flotilla? Were they armed and coming to Israel to attack people? Again, I don't understand this position from the Israeli government, and I probably never, ever will. Okay, so let's move on to another very, very important topic. And again, I don't want to waste any time. This one's very, very crucial. And we've got to talk about this before today's show ends. Nearly 2/3 of the United States is now in a drought. Now, we've talked about the food supply in this program before. Very, very important that we understand this. And we got these dry conditions stretching across all but 2 states, affecting more than 150 million people nationwide. And a growing drought spanning for much of the country raises a lot of concerns about not only water supplies, but agriculture, wildfire risk for millions of Americans. The biggest takeaway, though, the biggest problem with all of this, is the planting season that's coming up right now. Is there ample water to water the crops? Is that going to be possible? Because if not, then we're in lots of trouble. And I don't think anybody should be taking this lightly right now. I'm looking at the map right now, and it's abnormally dry or severely dry in many, many parts of the United States. In pretty much almost every single state, you're seeing at least some abnormally dry conditions for this time of year in April. This is obviously not good, especially for really the planting season. This is what it comes down to. If you don't have the crops to be produced, and by the way, what's taking place out of the Middle East doesn't help either when you have 35% of the global fertilizer, urea, nitrogen not coming out. Because now farmers are saying, listen, our prices are going up skyrocketing. We don't even know if we can afford this, if we can even get it. So we have 2 things going on at once. We have a drought, which is no good. We need the rainfall. And we also now have a fertilizer problem. So we have 2 things against our farmers here in the United States. And what happens, by the way, if they don't have a planting season? What happens if they don't produce the corn, the wheat, the soy, whatever it may be? What's going to happen then? They go out of business? That's no good. So this, again, is very, very troubling. And I think we need to find new ways to, I guess, use our ingenuity to do things that can help us in times of exceptional drought. But the amount of people impacted, but again, we have drinking water problems then. If we're not getting the right rainfall, we don't have the water stored up, what do people do then? They stop taking showers, they stop drinking water. How are you going to do that? It's not going to work out. Yep, it says here, the National Drought Mitigation Center said on a Thursday video call that for all U.S. states and Puerto Rico, the drought monitors showed a 52.46% of the area in moderate drought or worse, compared to 51% just a week prior, roughly affecting some 155 million people living in these areas with the drought. Yep. So, again, we have to hope Mother Nature kicks in. We hope we can have a wet spring in these areas and that they get the ample water supply. But again, this is no good. We're seeing in various parts of the country as of late, for example, Lake Mead right now. I'm looking at a picture of it right now. Absurdly low levels. Some of these places are in years and years of drought. They're just not getting the rainfall, folks. And again, problematic for things like energy as well. Think of the Hoover Dam, the amount of energy that supplies in California and Nevada. But this is not good. And again, I don't have any answers to this. I just wanted to prepare you to let you know, hey, this could be problematic. You might not have crops. You might not have drinking water. You might not have certain ample energy in parts of the country if you're using it like in, as I said before, the Hoover Dam for places like in California or in Nevada. We got to be very aware of this. And this is why I always tell you, make sure you are storing up food now. Make sure you are storing up right now. Because we might not have access. When I look at these maps, and by the way, I'll implore all of you to look at this map. It's in Newsweek. I mean, the overwhelming majority of the U.S. is in a drought right now. So we've got to be much aware of this. We know that drought conditions in Mexico, for example, are slimming down our herds here in the United States as well. That's nothing brand new. But we need the rainfall here, folks. So let's pray, let's hope for the best that obviously we get through this and the right amount of rain will obviously come down in these states and we'll be all right. Hopefully we will be. But we haven't seen anything like this in quite some time. So that's obviously very, very problematic. All right. Let's move on again, ladies and gentlemen. I got one more article for you. I didn't have time to go over this yesterday, so I want to go over this today. And it's a topic I really, really would like to discuss with you because it's very important to us. Let's start the Gateway Pundit. It says here that North Carolina uncovers some 34,000 dead voters that are still on the voter rolls. State board admits it is higher than we anticipated. Well, I thought dead people didn't vote. Why would dead people be on the voter roll in the first place? This is problematic because they don't update the voter rolls. And as a result of that, these names stay on. And does that mean these dead people were given ballots? It says here that officials submitted some 7,397,734 voter records to the SAVE system in April as part of an ongoing effort to clean up the voter rolls and ensure only eligible citizens can vote. What they found was something obviously very troubling when they found that there was 34,000 deceased people already sitting on these voter rolls. So they wanted to say that they were looking at the benefit of entering into a cross-state and federal database checks that allows them to uncover issues like this. And the goal was to use everyday available and legal tools at their disposal to achieve the most accurate voter rolls possible. Well, again, what they should do in all these states, let me just make this very clear. What you should do, North Carolina, California, New York, all these states, by the way, every state should be doing this right now. Clear the voter rolls completely, get people right then and there to go and re-register to vote at their given address. Make sure you use ID. This is why the SAVE Act is so important, which, again, the Democrats do not want. But make sure that we are doing these things to verify someone who they say they are with the proper identification, that they can prove indefinitely that they live at that address and only that address. And if they lived in any other states, they are taken off those voter rolls. This is the way you do things. This is the way you do things. And this is how you clean things up. This is how you ensure election integrity, which we so desperately need in this country. Not everyone is happy about this, though. Unfortunately, not everyone is happy about this. This is out of Breitbart. It says, Senator Alex Padilla has gone on to say that voter ID measures would disenfranchise those who forget IDs and forget to renew. Well, whose fault is that? And by the way, who goes to vote without their identification? That's another thing I want to ask you. Has anyone gone to the voter polls and said, hey, I forgot my ID? Uh-oh, can I still vote anyways? Obviously, that's ridiculous. First and foremost, that is ridiculous. Nobody forgets their ID when they go to vote. I've never heard of that, by the way. But this is more the problem. They make these excuses time and time again as to why they don't want voter ID. If you forgot your ID, if you don't remember to renew your ID, why would you be eligible to vote then? That's the question I want to ask everybody. Why would they allow you to do this? And of course, they can never actually answer these questions. So let me ask you this. If I go and, for example, let's say I was going to the store to buy alcohol. I'd never do that, but let's say I was doing that. And I say, well, I forgot my ID. Can you just give me the alcohol anyways? They're not going to do that. Unless I look much, much older. Thank God I don't. But that's the problem. Any other way for any of these massive parts of our life, if you're doing certain things, drive a car, you have to have an ID. Buy alcohol, you have to have an ID. Buy a firearm, you have to have an ID. I mean, this is part of the problem. They make an excuse for just voter IDs, but they require these massive restraints on every other thing. Anyways, here was Senator Padilla trying to make a case for this, and Alex Michelson of Fox News was questioning him on this. Take a listen.
The political context for all this is Donald Trump and the Republican Party desperate to hold on to power in November because their record has been so bad. Their only hope is to rig the elections. That's why they're doing this.
But there is this effort in California that is focused more on voter ID. What is wrong with the concept? If I show up to vote at my polling place, that I have to show an ID. When I have to show an ID to buy alcohol, I have to show an ID to get on a plane, I have to show an ID through so many aspects of my life. What's wrong with showing an ID to vote?
Yeah, again, I go back to it's a solution in search of a problem. In California, our elections are safe, they are secure, we want to keep them as
would this make it safer?
as possible. Well, but this could also keep eligible people from voting. If you forgot your ID, or you forgot to renew it, the week before, now it's all of a sudden it's expired and you're not allowed to vote. It's a solution in search of a problem.
No, actually, it's your problem. Isn't it your problem if you don't have the proper identification to vote? Yeah, try using that when you get pulled over by a police officer. Well, I have my ID, but, I forgot to renew it a couple months ago. It's okay though, right? Wrong. That is your responsibility. It's your responsibility to prove who you are, first and foremost. And this is no different. We need to have these safeguards in. We need to pass the SAVE Act right away to prevent these things from happening, because it happens time and time again. This is why they're making these excuses for why this happens, unfortunately. That's all for today's show, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you again for being here. Another show down, another week in the books, as always. Make sure you're staying prepped with food, water, medicine, fuel, money, tools, everything, especially in times of uncertainty. Stay prepped always, ladies and gentlemen. Enjoy the rest of your day. Have a great weekend. I'll see you back here on Monday for more groundbreaking news. Until then, be good, stay busy, and God bless.